What looks like an ordinary pig farm is believed to be the final resting place of dozens of women. The man once seen as quiet and honest was, in reality, a brutal murderer. He was one of the most notorious serial killers in Canadian history, Robert Pickton. Canada was once shaken by one of the most horrific criminal cases in its history. Over the course of nearly 2 decades, more than 60 women were murdered. The most chilling detail was how the killer disposed of the bodies by feeding them to pigs. When the truth came to light, the scale and brutality of the crimes stunned the nation. It became the largest serial murder case in Canadian history, and the pig farm itself turned into the country's biggest crime scene. So what really happened all those years ago? Let's return to the 1980 and uncover the truth behind the case. Vancouver is located in the southwest of Canada, close to the United States. Vancouver's downtown east side was once one of the poorest and most troubled areas in the country. In the 1980s, it was practically a haven for crime. At night, many women working the streets would roam the area, looking for customers. About 27 kilometers from Vancouver stood a large pig farm, covering roughly 160,000 square meters. This is where our story begins. On October 24, 1949, Robert Pickton was born in Port Coquitlam, just east of Vancouver. His family ran a pig farm, so meat was always plentiful at home. Pigs were the focus of daily life, and almost everything else came second. From an early age, Robert and his younger brother, David, were required to help on the farm under their mother's strict supervision. They also had an older sister, Linda, but their parents decided that the pig farm was not a suitable environment for a girl, so she was sent to live with relatives. As children, Robert and David earned an unfortunate nickname, Stinky Piggy. Their mother prioritized the farm over personal hygiene, and the brothers often went to school in dirty clothes, smelling of pig feed and manure. No one wanted to sit near them. When Robert was 12 years old, he used his savings to buy a young calf. The animal was kept on the family farm. One day, after returning home from school, he discovered that his parents had slaughtered it. In 1963, at the age of 14, Robert made a major decision. Since none of my classmates like me, I might as well drop out. His parents did not object to his decision. From that point on, Robert worked full-time on the family pig farm as a farmhand and butcher. Under his mother's supervision, he performed the physically demanding daily tasks of farm life, including the slaughter of animals, which he did without fear. He continued this routine for the next 15 years. Until 1978, tragedy struck Robert's family. His father died of illness, and the following year, his mother also passed away. Although the family was not very wealthy, the farm and pig farm occupied a large amount of land, which was a valuable inheritance. The 3 siblings divided the family assets according to their preferences. Linda chose not to take part in running the pig farm, and instead accepted shares and a portion of the family's savings. David agreed that Robert should take over the farm and pig operation, and in return, David received shares and the family house. In the end, Robert took over the farm and pig operation. With little money and no home of his own, he moved into a trailer near the farm. After years of strict control and a life spent doing nothing but hard labor, he was finally free. For the first time, Robert was his own master. Leftover pig organs from the family farm regularly had to be delivered to a processing plant in Vancouver's downtown east side. After taking control of the farm, Robert began making frequent trips to Vancouver's downtown east side. Having spent most of his life working alone, he was drawn to the nightlife of the area. At night, the streets were known for open prostitution, and Robert began visiting the area regularly. After years of hard, repetitive farm work, it was very different from the life he had lived before. In the downtown east side, Robert received attention he had never experienced before. He later said the women were attractive, spoke kindly to him, and often flattered him. After years of repetitive farm work, he was drawn to this lifestyle. Over time, his behavior became increasingly violent. He often brought sex workers back to his trailer near the farm. When some women refused his demands, the encounters ended in violence. Having slaughtered animals since his teenage years, he was familiar with blood and death. When women were killed, he disposed of their bodies using methods learned from years of working on the farm. During this period, sex workers in Vancouver's downtown east side began disappearing one after another. Many of these women lived unstable lives. They often had no fixed address, few close friends, and sometimes even used false names. As a result, their disappearances did not immediately attract public attention. Despite the dangers, many sex workers continued to go with clients in order to survive. Over time, the number of missing women continued to grow. In 1987, as the disappearances increased, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police formed a task force to investigate. However, the investigation made little progress. Many officers believed the women were transient and assumed they had simply moved elsewhere to work. With no bodies found and no clear leads, the task force was disbanded after about 2 years. The lack of progress angered the families of the missing women, but they had no choice. Each year, they organized memorial walks to remember those who had vanished. Rumors began circulating in the community that a serial killer was targeting sex workers in the area. However, police publicly denied these claims, saying most of the missing women had likely moved away, while others may have died from drug overdoses. Officials insisted there was no serial killer. For people who were already ignored by society, this response felt deeply unfair. With no real power and no one listening, all they could do was express anger and grief.
If they were women from SFU or UBC or exchange students, they would have acted upon it totally different.
Because of their background?
Because of their background, because they were drug-addicted prostitutes, they were throwaways. And that's the end of the story. They were throwaways and nobody gave a damn.
In 1994, Robert's pig farm business began to decline. He sold part of the family land and several properties, bringing in $5.2 million. With this money, Robert and his brother began living more freely. In 1996, Robert founded an organization called the Piggy Palace Good Time Society. Although it was registered as a charity, the group mainly raised money by hosting large parties and dance events. Robert also converted buildings on the pig farm into gathering spaces, turning the farm into a makeshift entertainment venue. Some local officials even helped promote the organization. The Piggy Palace Good Time Society quickly became well known. Robert did not create it out of goodwill. His goal was to attract large crowds, especially women. Free alcohol and roasted pork were offered, which proved highly effective. Soon, large numbers of people began showing up, including many sex workers from Vancouver's downtown east side. At night, hundreds of cars and motorcycles would arrive at the farm. The lights stayed on as people drank and partied through the night. Some fell asleep on the spot, while others stayed until morning. Over the years, thousands of people attended these parties. But behind the chaos, something darker was happening. At nearly every party, 1 or 2 women would go missing. These disappearances went largely unnoticed. Robert would lure some of the women to his trailer, where he killed them. Some remains were buried on the farm, while others were disposed of with pig waste at a processing plant. No trace was left behind. To the farm workers, Robert seemed quiet, awkward, and fair. To the partygoers, he appeared generous, giving away free food and drink. No one suspected what he was doing in secret. On March 22, 1997, Robert met a sex worker named Wendy in Vancouver's downtown east side and took her to his trailer camp. When he tried to handcuff her, Wendy fought back. Robert threatened her with a knife. During the struggle, both were injured. Wendy managed to escape to the roadside, where a passerby helped her, and the police later arrested Robert at the hospital. He was charged with attempted murder, but after paying $2,000 Canadian bail, the case was dropped because Wendy could not testify. Robert avoided punishment. After the incident, a local resident told the police that Robert might be linked to the missing women. Noting his strange behavior, and that he was seen taking women to the pig farm. The police did a quick check of the farm, but the investigation ended shortly after. In 1998, Robert's younger brother David was arrested for sexual assault, but the police did not link the missing women to either brother. In 1999, Bill Kirk, an employee at Robert's farm, saw newspaper reports about missing women and suspected Robert might be involved. Robert often drove a car with darkened windows, and the farm itself had a creepy reputation. The pigs would chase people, and the place felt menacing. A friend of Robert's, Lisa, claimed to have seen women's wallets and ID cards on the farm, but she refused to cooperate when questioned by police. Later that spring, another witness, Lynn Ellingson, said she saw Robert at the slaughterhouse holding a knife near a woman. She later refused to testify, partly because Robert supplied her with drugs. One report suggested that a refrigerator on the farm might contain human remains. Police questioned Robert, who denied the claim and said they could search the farm. However, no full search was carried out. Despite multiple warnings and clues between 1997 and 1999, Canadian police failed to act decisively, missing several opportunities to arrest him. In 2000, Robert's charity, the Little Piggies Good Times Club, was shut down after complaints from neighbors and financial irregularities. However, his crimes did not stop. By 2001, the number of missing women had risen to 59, putting significant pressure on authorities. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police formed a new investigation team to look into the disappearances. The case also gained international attention. The American television program America's Most Wanted featured the case and offered a reward of up to $100,000 for information. During this period, more women went missing, raising the total number of victims to 65. In early February 2002, Scott Chubb, a former driver who had worked for Robert, told police that he had seen several guns at Robert's farm. On February 5, police obtained a search warrant and raided the pig farm. During the search, officers found illegal firearms. More importantly, inside Robert's trailer, they discovered handcuffs, women's clothing, shoes, jewelry, and an asthma inhaler belonging to a missing woman named Serena Abotsway. Investigators also discovered blood inside the trailer, which DNA testing later linked to another missing woman, Mona Wilson. On February 22, 2002, Robert was arrested and charged with the murders of Serena Abotsway and Mona Wilson. After his arrest, Lynn Ellingson, who had previously been afraid to speak, came forward and agreed to testify about Robert's violent behavior. Police now believe that many of the missing women had been killed by him. Authorities then launched a massive search of the pig farm, using bulldozers, dump trucks, conveyor belts, and soil-sifting machines. Because of the size of the property, the work had to be done carefully and in stages, much like an archaeological excavation. Human remains were soon found on the farm. As evidence mounted, Robert was charged with 15 murders. The investigation was enormous and continued until November 2003. Police dug through about 300,000 cubic meters of soil, collected roughly 200,000 DNA samples, and recorded more than 600,000 pieces of evidence. It became the largest forensic investigation in Canadian history and cost about 70 million Canadian dollars. Around 80 unidentified DNA profiles were discovered, belonging to both men and women. The farm was sealed and searched for nearly 2 years. In May 2005, 12 more murder charges were added, bringing the total to 27. Robert became one of the deadliest serial killers in Canadian history, and his farm one of the largest crime scenes ever investigated. In March 2004, health officials warned that pork from Robert Pickton's farm could have been contaminated with human remains. The meat was not sold commercially, but Pickton had given it to friends and neighbors, which caused public fear. The trial began on January 30, 2006. Robert faced 27 charges of first-degree murder and pleaded not guilty to all of them.
So you've never taken any of the prostitutes back to your trailer?
Not since this incident, no. Hey.
But before that incident?
Nope.
He remained calm in court and never explained why he targeted the women. Prosecutors faced difficulties because there was little direct evidence. As part of the investigation, police placed an undercover officer in Robert's cell. During their conversations, Robert made statements suggesting he had killed many people. In 2007, the trial continued. One charge was dropped due to insufficient evidence, leaving 26 charges. These were split into 2 trials, one involving 6 counts and the other 20. On December 9th, the jury found Robert not guilty of first-degree murder on the first 6 counts, but guilty of second-degree murder, resulting in a life sentence with no parole for 25 years, the harshest sentence available under Canadian law, where the death penalty has been abolished. The remaining 20 charges were never tried. The government decided that further trials were unnecessary, since additional convictions would not have increased his sentence and the case had already cost a significant amount of public money. This decision divided the victims' families. Some were angry that not all charges were heard, while others were relieved that painful details would not be discussed again in court. In December 2012, the Missing Women Commission of Inquiry released its final report. It found that police failures and social prejudice, particularly against sex workers and Indigenous women, allowed the crimes to continue. While in prison, Robert attempted to publish an autobiography, which caused public outrage and was later withdrawn. His motives remain unclear. Some blame his upbringing, while others point to his work environment. Robert remains in prison and is expected to spend the rest of his life there.